Hi, my name is Melissa Giles, and I am going to be talking about the 10 Commandments. So let's see here. I feel like it's off. So the 10 Commandments are very, very, very important to know what they are and what they stand for. And when in the process of changing your way of thinking, it brings light on character defects, if you will, and how we react to certain things and what we do in our life also will lead you to your purpose as being one-minded with God. I feel like I'm looking at something other than the screen. So the 10 Commandments, here we go. Okay, so I am the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of slavery would be number one. And he is the one that brings us out of all of our troubles. And he's the one that we cry to him for all of the help, right? So he brings us out of everything that happens to us that we're crying to him for. He is the one that gave it to us, and so we must thank him for it first and foremost. And secondly, he brought us out of that slavery, whatever we were enslaved to. So that's the meaning of number one. Number two is, I am the Lord your God. You shall not have any other gods before me. You shall not make yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above or that is in the earth beneath, that it is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I am the Lord your God. I am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. And not making yourself a carved image means not loving anything more than him, but making a carved image would be such as any kind of addiction or behavior that is not in the likeness of him, and then not teaching your children, not bringing it down a generation, not bringing it to generation to put a stop to it, and loving him and seeing that. So, for my case, my addictions and behaviors have made me a slave to myself, and I have made them a slave to myself, and loving them more than I love God, and for that's not obeying his commandments whatsoever. So that's why, those are some things that I'm working on, and that's what that means. And then to bring it down to our children, like the saying is that we want our children to have much more than what we had when we were growing up, or living the life that we lived. And, that's breaking that generational curse. And it's one of the commandments. So being a carved image of your ego and being enslaved to your own thoughts is very crucial, like what we tell ourselves, and that's being a carved image is something that's not him, it's worldly thinking. And if you're really looking for your purpose, or if you're really looking for a change in your life, then that's something that we must look at as human beings. That's what we do, because it was brought forth down to us from generation to generation. That goes into Ecclesiastes, that particular one where it says, like basically figure out these things before your life is the golden, the silver cord is snapped, and the golden bowl becomes alive, which is him. But your silver cord, you die, and then you end up leaving those old behaviors and whatnot in your generation to have to deal with trying to figure it out for themselves in their generation, meaning your children. And, Ecclesiastes is a really good book too, but that's what I always refer to that as, if you don't want to pass on your behaviors and whatnot, and you want to change for your kids, then you don't want them to do the same thing, and you can break that generational curse so that they can have more than what you had. That really rings true a lot. It can be hard depending on what kind of slavery you're in, but that's what that means. Number 3, you shall not take the Lord's name in vain. You shall not take the Lord's name in vain. You should not say, oh, I'm not even going to say it because I can't, but saying, Jesus Christ, or oh God, and we see it on TV, we see it every day standing in line at the grocery store. Taking the Lord's name in vain is like saying the F word, in my opinion. That is one thought that he made me, and the transformation not do. Oh gosh is more precise, or it's more flattering to him because we're not using his name. I'm not using his name in vain. And because he's the one that made everything, and he's the one that gave us all everything. And we should honor him and honor that by not saying his name in vain. Oh, God should not be part of the vocabulary unless you're glorifying him or thanking him for something. And that's what that commandment says. Remember to keep the Sabbath day. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day, seventh day is a Sabbath day to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you, your son, or your daughter, your male servant, or your female servant, or your livestock, or your sojourner, who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the seventh day and made it holy. And we shall work hard, for 7 days. There's meaning behind that. That we should work hard for 7 days, for one, especially if we want to get something different, want to have something different. We work hard, the more money that we make, right? Secondly, the Sabbath day doesn't say what day that day is. And nowadays, every day, everybody's weekend could be Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. It's not necessarily always Sunday. But there are plenty of ways that we can keep whatever Sabbath day is for you, holy, to where it's all you're doing is just relaxing, and giving thanks to God, whether it be fasting or reading the Bible or going to church or, just relaxing, on a Sabbath day. You choose what your Sabbath day is. But we work hard for those 6 days. Honor your mother. Number 5 is honor your mother and father. And they brought us into the world, no matter how they treated us, no matter what they did to you, no matter what my parents did to me or I did to them. I love my parents with all my heart and with all of my soul. And at times I feel like I shouldn't. But that's okay. I do, because that is one of the commandments, is that, however they raised you or however my parents raised me, they did it the best that they could at the time that they knew how. And, I have to forgive them and forgive myself for the things that I've done, to them as well. And that all comes in time where all of those relationships are healed. There's a time for everything, right? So, love your mom and dad no matter what they do. And if you can have a relationship with them and heal that relationship with them, by listening to them, or by paying attention to what their advice is and not scolding you or disciplining you, but that they do it out of love, then, please do that. I mean, it's valuable, it's very, very valuable. Number 6 is you shall not murder. And murder is, well, it's saying murder like innocent blood, but it's also saying, do not slander your neighbor. Do not talk bad about them. Do not hate anybody. You can dislike somebody. You don't have to get along with everybody, but that doesn't mean that you have to be mean about it, or just because you have an opinion about something doesn't mean that, it's the right opinion, nor does the other person, doesn't mean that they're right or wrong. It's just a different way of thinking. And so when it says do not murder, it's like taking a step back, and that, comes in within faith, let God deal with it. But don't be hated. Don't be hated on, like, don't show hatred towards that. Whatever it is that you have a problem with the person, pray for them, and just because you think they're wrong doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong, and vice versa. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong. It's just a different perspective or a different way of thinking about things. And so do not murder means all kinds of different things, and meaning gossiping and slandering somebody, or, revenge or anything like that. The greatest revenge that you can get on anybody is to prove them wrong, first of all. And then second of all, let God take care of it, because he will. And then you shall not commit adultery. And committing adultery is basically, it can be like looking at somebody with lust in your heart, or even though you may not act, but it means like you could be looking at somebody with lust in your heart, or you can be talking to somebody with lust in your heart, and that's also committing adultery. I touched base with that in another video. And it says you shall not steal, and stealing means like, exactly what it says. I mean, there's no roundabout doing that, or saying anything about that. That is what that is. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Like, you should not tell a lie on somebody. Just because you don't like them doesn't mean that you can go and say, this person did this, or you don't like theirs. I'm just going to say their spirituality, and so this is what I'm going to do to this person. Like that would be another form of revenge. You love your enemies and you treat them like you would want to be treated. And unfortunately, sometimes it's hard, but in the end, it's worth praying for them, and it's worth not having those thoughts that they have on you, on them, because you're being the one-minded with God. Number 10. No, number 8, number 9. Okay, cool. You shall not convey your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. So you shall not be jealous or envious of them. If they have something that you want, then find out how they got it and go get it. If there's a pretty woman and he has a wife that's really pretty and you don't have that, well, then go find that. There's somebody out there for somebody. There's somebody out there for you too. Don't be jealous of it. If you're jealous of it, then there's something going on internally. If you don't feel that you can go get your own thing, then there's something going on internally. And it's a commandment. Don't be jealous. You shall not convey your neighbor's wife. You should not be jealous of what they have. You can have the same thing plus some if you were to think about it differently. And that's what that is saying. So 1 through 3 is 1 through 4 is like the foundation, right? Those are the morals, and the morals, it's the spiritual law. 5 through 10, we are all made to sin, right? because we all do these things that I just listed. And so basically the meaning of the 10 commandments is love and faith. You know, loving your God with all your heart and with all your soul, not making anything a carved image of him, right? Not making anything a carved image that's not of him. And basically, who is your master when it comes to that? You know, who are you really serving? You know, are you serving the addiction? Are you serving sexuality? Are you serving gambling, food? Like the list can go on and on and on. What is it that, who is your master? And then the other ones is just like basically loving people. You know, let God take care of your stuff. You know, everything that happens in your life happens for a reason, and it's the way that we react to it. And if you're trying to have a better life and do something different, and you want things to be going on for you better than what you have, then the commandments really tell you exactly how to do that, right? They give you a solid foundation of how to change your way of thinking to be of God and to be like-minded, to be with one. And it also leads you to his purpose, because you're starting to realize those character defects that you have. And then you start having faith, which is the most important and hardest spiritual discipline that you can ever have. And with that being said, faith is not easy to accomplish. However, once you do it, it's fantastic and it's wonderful. And you have all of the joy in the world because he gives you that joy for doing those things. And like I said, if you want something that somebody else has, you can go get that plus some, depending on how you treat that person, or, you know, what's in your heart. What is that intention? So those are the 10 commandments and what they mean. Now I'm going to read Exodus 20:18. So this is when Moses was up on Mount Sinai, and God was telling the 10 commandments, and all the Hebrews were down at the bottom of the mountain. And this is so profound, right? You know, God does never tell the Hebrews through the journey before the 10 commandments, you know, what God is telling Moses. He speaks to Moses privately. And so when he's on the mountain, when he's making these 10 commandments and he's writing them with his finger on stone, the people down at the bottom of the mountain, they are hearing him, right? So verse 18 of Exodus 20, it says, "Now all of the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. The people were afraid and trembled." This was after he wrote them. "And they stood far off and said to Moses, 'You speak to us and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us lest we die.'" Like at that point, they're afraid, right? So he said it so loud and clearly and said his power, right? And said his power that it scared them. So Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin." And right, so like I could only imagine how those people were feeling hearing that voice. You know, like I would be so deathly afraid too. And in my times of trouble and not listening, I have been afraid, you know, a few times. So, you know, the point of it is God has come to test you. Like, you know what these commandments are, yet you're still doing the same thing. I'm teaching you something different, yet you're still doing the same thing. And the more we give into this and knowing what they are and how we can change our way of thinking to be one-minded, the better our lives become. The more people come into our lives that we never expected, the more we have fulfillment and thankfulness and joy that we have never experienced. The more we are more comfortable within ourselves, so that we don't feel those feelings of anger and enviness and jealousy and strife, and just like when you're doing those things, you're being disobedient because the 10 commandments say that you're not to do those things. And if you want to become one-minded in God and you're looking for something different, or you have a calling on your heart, then these are the things that you must sit down and really think about. And later I will be doing other videos. So I encourage to continue to watch, or if you're watching this later, I'm not live, but if you watch this later, then I encourage you to follow me and hear how you can change these commandments. But if there's stuff that is going on in your life and you're doing these things, it says it here. Do not fear, for God has come to test you. So you cannot blame God for anything that's continuing on in your life. You can't blame him because he told you. You know, I mean, he told you from the 10 commandments, you shall not do these things, right? So that is profound to me. How can I blame God for any position that I'm in right now if I don't choose to listen? You know, how can I blame him for anything? I can't, because I have a clear understanding of what these 10 commandments are, right? So I hope this helps, and know that he loves you, because he does, and he loves you unconditionally. That's the thing, he loves you unconditionally. So, you know, we can mess up as many times as we want. It's about making like different changes. It's about wanting that joy and that fulfillment of your life, and ultimately will lead you to your purpose if you can do these things, in which it's hard to do. So with that being said, it doesn't happen overnight. However, it does happen, I promise. And I thank you for listening, and God bless you. And thank you. Bye.